Hi folks, HR Funk here with a brand new optic from Osight, and I feel like I've said that a lot over the course of the last 18 months or so, and it's hard to believe that just over a year and a half ago, Olight/Osight was not even in the firearms optic business, but since that time, they have come on the scene and released several different models to include this brand new one. This is the Osight C, and as you will see, this is an open emitter style optic built on the RMR footprint. It's intended for use on handguns, and I've mounted it on a pistol, this time around being the X-Star EP9 that I'm still continuing to evaluate here on the channel. And I thought this would be a great test bed for this brand new Osight C, and I'm going to get right into the review. First up is going to be a close-up look at the Osight C, then we're going to head out to the range and see how it performs. So here we go. We'll start this up-close look at the Osight C with the way you receive it, which is in the box. And in fact, this box is still sealed in the plastic, so this is going to be a first look for me as well as you. But I do have a pretty good idea of what to expect when we open the box. First, I'll have to cut my way through the plastic. And upon opening the box, we find the typical instruction card that comes with most Osight products. In fact, I think it comes with all the Osight products. There is a reflective sticker, a thank you message from Osight for the purchase, and when we remove that, we find the Osight C itself. Along with that comes a variety of accessories. Inside of this box, we have an Osight tool, the user's manual, a selection of mounting screws, and I believe in here somewhere there is a battery, but I have not found it yet. So could be in here. I don't feel it. I'm going to have to search around and find that battery. It turns out the battery was hiding in the most obvious location of all, which is in the battery compartment of the optic. And there is a small tab there that needs to be removed. And I don't know if I have to open the battery compartment. Looks like I'm going to have to open the battery compartment to get that out of there. I did notice as well, along with the Osight tool, there are some spare battery compartment screws. So if you happen to lose one of those things, you've still got a couple more that come along with the Osight in the package. And there's the battery tray removed from the optic, and you can see that CR1632 battery there. I will remove this film, and then once I reinstall the battery, it will be ready for use. After setting aside the packaging and all the accessories, here's our first up-close look at the Osight C itself. And as I said during the opening, this is an open emitter style red dot optic. Unlike the original Osights, this is not a rechargeable optic. As you saw, it has a replaceable battery that is mounted in a side battery compartment, but otherwise, in form and function, it is very similar to those original Osights. Once again, the Osight C is built on the RMR footprint. The housing of the Osight C is constructed from anodized black 7075 T6 aluminum. The lens that you see here in front of you is 0.95 inches wide by 0.75 inches high. I have used Osight's own Picatinny rail mounting adapter here that you can see. These are available from Osight if you want to mount this on a similar rail on your own firearm. Otherwise, this is a direct mount to an RMR style slide cut on your handgun. Here's a look at the side-mounted control buttons for the Osight C. To turn the sight on, simply press and release either the plus button or the minus button. To turn the sight off, both buttons need to be pressed simultaneously. These buttons also obviously control the brightness levels for the Osight C, and by pressing and releasing the plus button, that will increase the brightness one level. Pressing and releasing the minus button will decrease the brightness one level. There are 10 brightness levels for the Osight C. The lowest 2 brightness levels are night vision compatible, and when you reach either the highest brightness setting or the lowest brightness setting, the reticle will flash once to indicate that it has reached that point. There's another view of the side-mounted battery compartment for the Osight C. As I said earlier in the video, the battery used by this optic is a CR1632. And since this is a multi-reticle design, the reticle selected by the shooter determines the projected battery life for that battery. Assuming there's a fully charged battery to begin with, on a brightness setting of 3, if the dot-only reticle is selected, the projected battery life is 100,000 hours. Now, I did the math on that. Actually, I cheated and used a calculator, and that comes out to over 11 years of battery life for that dot-only reticle. Obviously, as I said, that assumes a fully charged battery to begin with. With the circle dot reticle, if that is selected by the shooter, the projected battery life is 30,000 hours, which is over 3 years. And if the circle only reticle is selected, then the projected battery life is 40,000 hours. Aiding in that battery life is the motion sensor technology built into the Osight C. If the Osight senses no movement for a period of 3 minutes, the illumination for the reticle will power down, but if the sight senses any motion whatsoever, it immediately comes back on. So anytime the firearm and the optic are not being used for 3 minutes or longer, it's not drawing nearly as much power from the battery, and as I said, that helps to extend that battery life. In case you're wondering how to determine when the battery needs to be replaced, the Osight C has a low battery indicator. When the battery level drops to a point where replacement is necessary, the reticle will triple flash. So if you look at the reticle and see it's flashing, it's time to replace that battery. The Osight C also has a memory. If the sight powers down either because it senses no movement for 3 minutes, or if it is physically powered down by pressing and holding both buttons simultaneously, when it comes back on, it comes back at the last brightness setting that was selected by the shooter. And if for some reason a particular shooter does not like the fact that the optic will power down when it senses no movement for 3 minutes, that feature can be disabled, and also the memory feature will save that. So if you disable the motion sensor, then when you turn the sight off and turn it back on, it will still be disabled. It comes from the factory default with the motion sensor enabled, but as I said, you can turn that off if you prefer. The Osight C is adjustable for both elevation and windage by means of the 2 screws that you see here at the rear of the sight, and these are graduated in 1 minute of angle clicks. I don't know what the total adjustment range is for the Osight C because it's not listed in any of the material that came to me along with the sight. But I've not had any problem zeroing the Osights before. I don't think that I'm going to have a problem this time around with the Osight C either. For once, I've got not too bad of a look at the reticle through the camera. This is a view of the 3 minute of angle dot. By pressing and holding the minus button for 3 seconds, that will toggle through the other reticle options. There is the circle only. As I said, that is a 30 minute of angle circle. And pressing and holding again will give us the combination circle dot reticle. Also, if you press and hold the minus button, just as I did a moment ago, and hold it, it will cycle through the reticle options every 2 seconds. So you don't have to keep pressing and releasing if you don't want to. You can just wait till it gets to the reticle you want, and then release the minus button, and you're all set. The Osight C is rated as being drop-proof from a height of 1 meter. It is also waterproof to IPX6 standards, which means it should not be affected by high-pressure streams of water coming at it from any direction. We'll definitely test that. Also, it has a lifetime warranty from Osight, so if you do have a problem with it, you can contact Osight, and I found them to have very good customer service over the years, so there shouldn't be any problem getting it either repaired or replaced if there is some issue. That's going to do it for the up-close look at the Osight C. The next order of business was to head off to the range and establish a good zero. In this case, I decided to zero it at a distance of 25 yards with the X-Star EP9. Here's a look at the last 5 shots that I fired after establishing that zero. And much as I suspected, there was plenty of elevation and windage adjustment in the Osight C in order to get that good zero at 25 yards. Now, I'm going to keep using that same target that you just saw, along with the same ammunition. In fact, I'm going to be taking it out of the same box, which is a little out of reach at the moment, but that is House of Pain 124 grain full metal jacket ammunition that I used to fire that group. And we're going to see, as I progress through the testing, if there's any deviation in the point of impact from the things that happen to this site as I'm testing it. First up is going to be an extreme temperature test. So the sight and the EP9 are both going to go into my freezer for a period of 24 hours. Once again, for your viewing pleasure, here's a dramatic shot of my freezer. And the X-Star EP9 is going in here, and I have to find a place for it to fit. That ought to work. Time on deck is 12:36, and this is Tuesday, August the 19th of 2025. So the Osight and the EP9 are going to stay in there for at least 24 hours. I'll pull them out tomorrow, and we'll see how everything looks. It is now 12:30, if I can get my watch focused here, on August the 20th of 2025, and maybe you can read that. It's not focusing very well. Anyway, the Osight and the EP9 have now been in the freezer for over 24 hours, just a little over 24 hours, and I'm about to pull them out and see just exactly how they are faring. And the EP9 is very cold. And hopefully I'm going to be able to get this to where you can see it. I will try to bring this back somehow to get you a look through the Osight. I can tell you it is still working. And I can see the reticle when I look through there, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not. Not surprisingly, the lens is fogging up. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get a look at it for you, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. It is still working just fine, and I can see the reticle inside there. Now it's time to move on to some waterproof testing. I'm going to explain what you're about to see before I actually start doing it, because once I turn the water on in this faucet, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me or not. If you've seen very many of my optic reviews, you know that after coming out of the freezer, I typically immediately submerge the optic in very hot water. The reason I do that is because if there's going to be water incursion into the optic, it's going to occur when the optic is very, very cold, or at least that's when it's most likely to occur, because all of the seals and all of the other portions of the optic have constricted somewhat in the extreme cold of the freezer. And by the way, the freezer is right around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. When I do that, the water that I use comes from this faucet, and it normally comes out between about 135 and about 145 degrees, just depending on what day it is and how hot the water is that day. I've already run water through here, so as soon as I turn it on, the water is going to be very, very hot. So I'm going to be subjecting the Osight to that thermal shock, but since the Osight, this Osight, has a waterproof rating of IPS 6, that means that it should not be affected by high pressure water spray coming from any direction, but it does not rate it as being submersible. So I'm not going to submerge it. It's going to be all but submerged when I turn the water on, and it's still going to be exposed to that thermal shock. So let's see what happens. By the way, I'm also subjecting the EP9 to this same thermal shock, and hopefully the polymer does not decide to crack. Let's get the front. I never know how long to do this for. I've done this sort of thing to Osights in the past, and they've never been fazed by it. We'll see if that continues with the Osight C. By the way, you might be able to see the water steaming. I can see steam rising off of it right now. All right, is the Osight still working after all that? Yes, absolutely it is. Again, I will try to get you a view, and again, I might not be entirely successful, but I'll do my best. There you can see the reticle. I got at least a little bit of a view of it that time. And I'm not sure why I can't get a better view. Looks like there might be a water puddle inside there. There we go. There is the reticle. This is the circle dot reticle, even though it doesn't look like it in this view. Let's give it a little bit more water to drink, just to make sure. And yes, it is continuing to work just fine. I will try to take this over to the shop and get a view through the optics so you can see it a little bit better, but it absolutely is still working just fine. And there's a better look at the reticle from the Osight C, and the only thing I have done to it since I took it out from underneath the faucet is wipe the water drops off the lenses, but it does still appear to be working just fine. If I press and hold that minus button, it should toggle through the reticles, and it's doing that with no problem whatsoever. So at this point, everything still seems to be working properly. Next, we're going to head back to the range and see if it's still continuing to hold 0 as it did before, and make sure nothing strange happens when we start to shoot with it again. And for all of you who are following my ongoing assessment of the X-Star EP9, it also seems to have come through the freezer test and the water test with no problems whatsoever. Everything still seems to be functioning just fine. But we'll also find out when we get to the range if anything strange might be going on with it. And just like that, I'm back out on the range with the Osight C and the EP9. And this is a dark and dreary afternoon. In fact, it's so dark and dreary, I hope you can see okay as I'm recording this. It's been almost exactly 2 hours since the Osight came out of my freezer. I wanted to get out here faster, but it just took me a little longer to get ready than I expected it to. In any case, I am set up once again at a distance of 25 yards, and the first order of business is going to be firing another 5-shot group on the same target that I used the last time to see if there's any deviation whatsoever in the 0 of the Osight since the last time I shot. So let's get to it. It's 5 shots down range. Let's go take a look. Those shots are a little bit lower than the first group, but I think probably I'm just holding a little bit lower on the target. I was probably holding in this area before when I was shooting the first 5-shot group. That time around I was holding right about in the center of these 3 white stickers and hitting just a little bit lower on the target. Again, I'm not going to attribute that to a zero shift, at least not yet, until I do a little bit more testing and we see how things go. Once again, for my drop testing, I'm going to employ my trusty block of hardwood. And the Osight, as you recall, is rated for drops from a height of 1 meter. So that's the height that I'm going to drop it from. And I'm not going to get too carried away with my drop testing. Reason being, since I have a polymer rail on top of the EP9, if the sight strikes the hardwood and the metal mount causes the polymer rail to deform slightly, it could allow the Osight to move, and that could give the appearance that there's been a zero shift, when in fact the sight itself is fine, and it's just that the rail has been damaged. So here we go. Oh, before I start, once again, the EP9 is clear. There is absolutely no magazine, no ammunition, nothing like that as I am conducting this drop test. That's about 1 meter, and that was right on the sight. Once again, height of about 1 meter. And that was a little bit onto the left side of the sight. One more time. Right dead center on the Osight. And it is still working. Let's see what the zero looks like. 5 more shots from 25 yards. I'm going to use the exact same point of aim as before. Let's head back down range. And those 5 shots are right in with the last 5 shots, which bears out my suspicion. There was no shift in the zero with the last 5 shots that I fired. It's just that when I shot at this target the first time, there was nothing to use as an aiming point. So I obviously held just a little bit higher, and these shots hit here. This time around, when I used the exact same aiming point, these 5 shots are right with the other 5 shots. So no zero shift at all. Now let's go on and try something else. This time I remembered to plug my microphone into my target camera, which is what I'm using to record this segment, so you should be able to hear me a little bit better than you did the last time that I was doing the drop test. So I'm about to do drop test number 2 again. The EP9 is completely cleared, no ammunition, no magazine, so it is safe. I'm again going to be dropping the Osight and the EP9 from a distance of about 1 meter, but this time I'm going to try to angle it so that it strikes on the corners, the top corners of the Osight. I'm going to try to strike the right corner, the left corner, then I'm going to try to angle a little bit to the rear and catch the back of the sight, and then a little bit to the front and catch the front of the sight, and see if this causes any problems for our zero. So about 1 meter again. That was pretty much right on the left side. See if I can get the right side now. No, that was the side of the EP9, and I might have broken something. Yes, I broke the charging handle. I've got a piece of it there still, but it is now broken off. So it's the first thing damaged on the EP9. Hopefully it'll still function. So let's see if I can get that side of the Osight again. And, now let's finish the drop test here. Then I'll see what we can do about getting the EP9 to function. That was where I wanted it to hit. Try to get the front. And try to get the back. All right. And the Osight is still working. Now I got to find the various parts of the EP9 to see if I can get it to chamber around. And using a little bit of Marine Corps engineering, I think I've got the EP9 back into operating condition again. albeit the charging handle is a casualty. Let's see what these 5 shots look like. There's 5 more shots. Let's head back down range. And once again, those 5 shots stayed right with the last 5 shots that I fired before that I forgot to cover up with the stickers. This is one of those days, folks. Seems like nothing is going right. Other than the fact that the Osight is performing extremely well. I don't see any issues whatsoever after the extreme cold weather, the drowning, the drop testing, or anything else. It is holding zero. The sight is working perfectly. There's no issues whatsoever that I can see. So let's discuss some final thoughts and then I'm going to get out of here. Since it is so dark out at the range and there's other shooting going on there, I decided to come back here to the shop to record my final thoughts on the Osight C. And my final thoughts are going to be pretty succinct because truthfully, it's getting kind of boring testing Osight products because they just keep going through all the testing and working just fine. And the Osight C was no exception to that. I don't know if you noticed it or not. I didn't realize it until I was reviewing the video that the last 5-shot group that I fired from 25 yards out at the range in this video had the first 3 shots essentially go into one hole that was dead center in the target just below the heart. So that's a testament to the accuracy of the Osight C, the Hot Munitions ammunition, and also the X-Star EP9. And speaking of the EP9, it's a little worse for the wear. The charging handle did break off. Actually, it more or less shattered when it hit the hardwood after the one drop when I was performing the drop test. But as you saw, I was able to still get it to function. It took a little bit of work. I was able to work the charging block back to the point that I could lock the bolt to the rear, and then when I inserted the loaded magazine, all I had to do was release the bolt and it worked normally. Other than that, the EP9 has no marks on it or no other indications that it was subjected to any sort of drops or anything else. So all in all, I think this was a pretty good test all the way around. For the Osight C, the MSRP is $179.99, but if you're considering purchasing one, I would suggest waiting until September 8th of 2025 because there's going to be a sale on the Olightstore and you're going to be able to save 20% on your purchase of an Osight C, and I believe that sale applies to everything else on the Olightstore. For details, check out the information section of this video. In any case, that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments about this video, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, stop by my website, hrfunk.com. Check out the news and information page to see all the latest things going on with me and the channel. And go by the products page because a lot of the products that I've reviewed have links on that page. And there's information beneath some of those links that'll save you some money if you decide to make a purchase. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.